Hi and welcome to the SI Experience. It's Chris Doughty here. It is Tuesday the 9th of June. We are here today to actually discuss a topic that we've actually gone through before, but I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in the next stage of this, which is securing money, contracts, and actually discussing and going through the contracts with builders and, more importantly, third parties. So I'm going to bring in my COO, Del, who's a very experienced person in this, and we're going to be going through this today. So any questions at all, please ask. We are live on both YouTube and Facebook. I can see there's already people having a look at this, so please don't be shy with any questions whatsoever. So I'm going to bring Del in. Hey, Del, how are you, mate?
Hello. Good afternoon, or whatever time it is in the world when this is being watched.
So I was just saying to everybody that we've already had this topic and the discussion before, but I think it's something that just needs going over again and again and again, because we still see a lot of people get into a lot of problems contractually when investing from afar and investing here in the UK. And today we're going to go through building contracts. We're going to go about contracts in general, and more importantly, how people can easily protect themselves, I think is the summary.
Absolutely.
So I think where we're going to start off at, we've got a load of questions which we sort of had from other people. We put it in ourselves, so we're going to go through these step by step. But anybody on the comments or anything, please. Hi, David. David's here, so here we go. We've already got some interaction. Nice to see you, David. So we're going to go through, as I say, step by step questions, and I think Del's going to go through it. So Del, just give us a little bit of why this is your a topic for SI, but specifically yourself. You've been dealing with investors who have had trouble. Why is this a topic that is a bugbear, and you really want to be able to, and us and SI want to be able to keep harping on about this to people to get it right? Why is that a bugbear for you?
Yeah, I guess it's become, I don't know, not quite say a personal crusade, but I've had a fair amount of involvement with this with individuals who've been on the bad side. And the essence of and that really was brought about by people not having a contract at all, and I was a bit staggered by, particularly we've had people who've been through all manner of property education courses in theory, and I kind of wondered, well, how can you have gone through property education and find yourself in a position where you've bought a property that requires a substantial refurbishment, I don't know, a quarter of the capital is a refurbishment, and you haven't contracted with a builder, you've just done it on a say-so and a promise that everything's going to be fine. And we've seen, in numerous occasions where, whether it's a small cosmetic thing or through to a, completely demolishing the property and starting again, people are doing it without a contract. And if you haven't got that, it's all well and good and things turn out fine. But when building work happens, things go wrong, things change, spec changes, and invariably you end up with dispute about what work's been done, what should be paid for, and then that leads to a load of a waste of time, a waste of money, and in my experience, a waste of cost for investors, kind of in battles with builders or with their sources about who said what to that because they haven't got a contract. So there's more detail than that, but at a very basic level, I just can't stress this enough of, don't do building work or refurbishing work without a contract. We wouldn't do much else without a contract. So why do that when it involves your own savings?
And ultimately as well, by overruns, it not being clear, it not being contractually secure. Ultimately, we're here to invest. If you get it wrong, it's affecting your investment. And your ROI. So let's get the first question up, and we'll address it in a structured way. So in terms of sourcing properties, let's say with sources, and contracting with builders, and again, we want to separate that out for everybody. There's two parts to the process. What contracts do I need as an investor?
So, and this is where I think in our world, the kind of challenge lies in that. In my mind, I sort of think there's sort of three buckets of activity being covered here. In that there's what I think of as the sourcing of the property and the actual finding it in the first instance. And then the second part is you're often, particularly in the case of the sorts of deals that we get involved in, you are then requiring that sourcer to act for you in terms of looking after the investment. So in terms of project managing, having sourced it, acquiring it with you, helping you find a builder. He should be helping you make sure the right contracts are in place with that builder, finding your message. There's a project management element in the middle. And then finally, there's the actual physical building work. And those are three different things. And the way that we set up was to say, okay, within our system, we can enable automated contracts to be put in place for the sourcing element. Now, after that, every project's different, because on one project you'll have, you'll be buying a fully tenanted flat that literally you source it, you buy it, and you're done. There's not a lot else to do. Everything's embedded. At the other end, you might be, knocking down a 5-bedroom house and reconfiguring and building a block of flats. For all I know, from a project management and a construction perspective, vastly different. So within the standard contracts, we said, okay, here's a standard contract that covers the sourcing activity. We have tried to cover the project management activity, but you've got to look at that on a case-by-case basis to say, okay, is this effective in terms of what I'm requiring? And we say in it what we think you should be expecting from a project management perspective, but you might have other ideas and thoughts around that. But moreover, the thing that needs to be very clear is those contracts don't cover building work. It isn't a contract for a construction project. And again, in our world, we say, our sources saying, okay, we think it's going to need a new bathroom and it's going to need, kind of the windows replaced. And that isn't a building contract. It's a very different thing to say in a building contract. It should say, what is the scope of the work? What is the quality of the materials being used? What is the timetable? What's going to be paid and in what order? So you need to be very clear that it isn't a building contract. A sourcing contract is very different. And therefore, then after that is, who are you contracting with to do that piece of work? And so your sourcer is doing that building work and he is taking responsibility for it, in which case you need a separate, and this is very important, separate contract with the sourcer for the building work, or you need a contract for the building work with the actual builder. Broadly, one of those two things.
So what we're showing on the screen here, and this is just for everybody to see, and again, it's something that we've built in. So when, for example, we say use the system, we say, protect yourselves. And this is for the initial engagement step of working with the sourcer. You've found a property, you've got your due diligence, you've worked out that this is a decent property for you. You've put in an offer, and here's the example here. So here's an offer been made. And when these offers have been made and accepted, and this is what we want to be very clear upon, the sourcer and the investor have now accepted and signed digitally the sourcer terms of business. And this is a facilitation by Sourcing Investments to actually standardize the contract between the investor and the sourcer and in the way that protects both and is fair. Because I think historically, when people are dealing with sources, they're dealing with sources who many a time don't even have a contract. And even if they have developed their own contract, it's normally very unfair towards the investor themselves. And so when it comes down to any kind of disputes or anything, really, you've got no leg to stand on. So what I wanted to highlight to everybody here is we actually have the sourcer terms of business, which is standardized. And again, it's good for sourcing agents on the platform because this is just another level of detail. And more importantly, another role or another aspect to the process, which is automated. And ultimately, this is a proper legal contract signed between the two parties. And again, this is why we talk about protection. And that is the sourcing contract in itself. So
and the thing I say about that particular contract is, as with all things, we've tried to create a standardized set of T's and C's. And you're accepting them, and you're saying you've read them, you've accepted them, but there's nothing in there to say, okay, as an investor, there is something specific to my project that I want covered. Let's say, for example, you are, buying 2 adjacent properties and blending the titles. And you might want in there that the sourcing agent has agreed that he is going to work with you to, facilitate that piece of work being done. Yeah. You might want to add it on, and you can add that either as you could get a signed agreement between you. Frankly, for me, if it was in the conversation area saying, can you just confirm that you agree also, in addition to these T's and C's, to do this and this and this, and it was in there, then that would work, But for the most part, you can't be, kind of actually scribing it out on paper and signing it in some way. So yes, it's a digital contract. We try to make it quite balanced, as fair as possible between kind of sourcer and investor, and it's open to subject to people adding to it or making their amendments. But I think the one thing I want to stress is it isn't a building contract. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
So it leads us nice into our second question, which is, so you've had the offer accepted, you've signed the contract with the sourcer for the sourcing aspects of the deal, and then the real question now is okay, I've got refurbishment works. How can an investor make sure that they're contracting with a decent builder? And it's all well and good having a contract, but does that mean that the builder is any good? So what are your thoughts and comments for an answer for that for investors watching?
No, I guess, in our case, most, our sources will generally come with, their own kind of preferred contractor. You're not obliged to use them. You can use your own, and that's a discussion between you and your sourcer. And obviously, the initial questions is understand what your sourcer understands. So how long have they been working together? How many projects have they worked on together? What have been the successes and failures of those? So try and get some background. Now, some people will stop at that, and some people are more, I guess some people are more diligent than others. And I know from my perspective, in my own projects, I'd be saying, okay, I want to talk to the builder. And I think there's no harm or shame in doing your homework on your builder and having the builder understand that you're doing the homework, keeping them on their toes, So I'm asking, how long have you been trading? Who owns the company? Checking what they're telling me is correct on Companies House. Because if the building firm's been going for, 6 months, and 2 years before that they had a different building company, and 2 years before that, I've got red flags going on all over the place. If I find a building company that's been owned by the same guy, and he's going to be my builder, and he's been around for 10, 15 years,
yeah.
Does that give me some comfort? And is there anything else on the Companies House that worries me in terms of, has he been late buying accounts? Has he got petitions for winding up? That can be quite telling. How big is the firm? How many projects have they got? Is it just him and his buddy, or is it kind of a 40-man construction firm working on multiple projects? Are they accredited? Are they Federation of Master Builders? Can I see photos and videos of previous projects? And I guess a really important one is, can I get references of previous clients, and also even another current client, to say, okay, show me the projects you're working on. Can I go and speak to that client? What do they say about them? We wouldn't be afraid to kind of interview the contractor and look for other. There's lots of online references now. Review sites, and start doing homework on names and finding reviews on the main individuals involved, and going back to the terms and conditions. Ask them how they contract. Find out what contract they use. Do they have their own standard terms? What's their insurance policy details? And ask for a copy, because down the line, when you need a copy of builder's insurance, it can be pretty hard to get. Kind of if they've let you down, gone bust, whatever it is. So don't be afraid to ask for it in advance.
And talking about doing due diligence on who the potential builder is, etc., or through the sourcing agent. Well, again, what I wanted to show you, this is another property where we are talking about the renovation escrow service, which we have built to allow the money relative to each stage of a building contract to be controlled. So just to be very clear for everybody, that's just the money flow aspect. It's not the actual legal binding contract with the builder. So but both go hand in hand. And what I'm showing on the screen here is showing that when the sourcing agent, who is acting as, in this case, the project manager, we're looking at here, and again, this is where I urge, why have we built this? This is protection for the investors. This is actually stating who is the main contractor taking responsibility for the delivery of the works. In this case, it's the Mighty Red Card Limited. You can then go and check Companies House and go and see that company, go and see that individual, and go and see how long have they been trading for, have they got any prior issues with companies being shut down, etc. And also, you can actually see here the regulatory disclosure. Has the sourcer got any financial interest in the execution of the work? So are they getting fees, or do they own the building firm, etc.? So really, from an SI perspective, with all our investors, we're actually, making sure that the sourcing agent is disclosing these in a very transparent way. And this all adds to that benefit of what you're talking about, Del, which is checking and doing some due diligence on who you're going to be actually working and dealing with.
Yeah.
So I think that really answers that. And then let's say, for example, we found a builder, and what needs to go into the contract? What's the basic outlines of that? And do as an investor, do I just sign some standard contract terms? A lot of the times, most people don't even know what a standard building contract looks at. So those are the two questions there. What would you suggest there for investors?
So if you think about it in its very essence, we're talking about what's the scope of the work, defining definitions around quality and materials, the cost, timetable, and when I go to the cost, the payment and the mechanism for payment, i.e. the schedule of payment. You need to agree. It needs to be very clear what the scope of the work is. What you're asking to do, and typically you want to see some form of schedule of work or bill of quantities that actually sets out in detail what's being done, and in an ideal world, the pricing of those items. And you want to get designer, architect, or your sourcer to make sure that somewhere there's a schedule of work that you're agreeing with your contractor, and that forms part of the contract documents. And you'll have references to specifications and information about location of how your bathroom's configured, obviously on drawings, and it needs to be in sufficient detail for you and the contractor to be clear on what work they are pricing for. So it's very clear down the line who is supposed to do what for who. Because if you haven't got that, this is where the problem then starts, is that if you're heading for claims by your contractor saying, look, we did that work and it wasn't contracted for, and you're back to he said, she said. So that contract should be very clear. This is what I was asked to do. I executed that. Now, if you decided halfway through to add a bathroom, change the colour of whatever, then that's a discussion between both parties about what you're paying in addition for what was on that contract. So, and the other part about it is, in terms of going back to the pricing, is the source's contract, I wouldn't be afraid to shop around and look at alternate quotes. If you've got that bill of quantities, it's not that difficult to find other reputable builders. And to some extent, it might be a reference check on the source's own builder. I'm definitely an advocate of cheapest isn't best, particularly in the building game. But if you've got 3 or 4 quotes, is the source's quote in the bounds of reasonable, or is it double all the other 3 quotes? So there's no harm in looking at comparable quotes. And the other thing I would say is, wherever you can, get fixed quotes. If you've got sort of open-ended stuff involving, we're going to charge you X per day, that certainly isn't the way I would be going on small building work. So definitely going for fixed, and also being very clear about VAT, which can be a little bit of a minefield in construction work, but just be very clear about whether your quotes are including VAT or ex VAT.
Yeah, because we came across that with a recent refurbishment for one of the investors, where unfortunately the builder tried to put the responsibility of his miscalculation of being VAT onto the client after the works have been done. Right?
So I think it was like the original quote and everything was for 40,000, and the inside invoice is for 50, and they're saying, well, he's just sort of shaking his shoulders, going, what is the VAT? Of course, but because it was never written into a contract, whether it was in or out, it's then a point of debate, and quite a difficult debate.
And what we're showing here, again, for everybody, investors and sourcing agents, what we've done is built into the system. This is, documents in order to facilitate. So what you can see here is, again, sort of a long video of Dell, going through what the importance of building contract is, which is obviously this is live. There's even an example JCT contract. So for small minor works, this is an example of what you should be receiving from your sourcing agent and builder, which again just lays out the 3 things, which is the specification, the time, and the payment structure around it, and more importantly, including VAT or not. So these are very, very simple documentation which are in amongst there. You can use it. You can even use them as examples to say to your sourcing agent, "This is what I need." And then again, we've gone even further from an SI perspective to protect everybody. This is a guidance. Identifying all single aspects of the contract, which again, when you're dealing with a refurbishment, this is all here. And so the guidance to say, I didn't know, or I just trust somebody, you have to take responsibility for yourself. So again, highlighting for everybody, it's all within, and being an SI investor, it's all within your areas. And again, that support allows you to execute professionally and properly at every step of the way. So I think that's just highlighting the power of what we've got there and what we've built into the system. So you found them, you've done your research. Do you sign their standard terms? Well, again, you've got to be able to check those, and we've shown some documentation there, which as long as it measures up against that as a standard sort of format and contract, then you've got that. So now then, well, let's move on to, okay, so the big part, money, payment. So how should I pay for the work? And I think one of the biggest concerns, and it's for anybody, right, is the builder going to run off with my money, being a big concern? But more importantly, even if they're not running off with it in the extreme case, how do I confirm that the quality of the work has been done at the stages, for me to be, happy that I'm going to release £10,000 of a £50,000 project? So what would you say to everybody on that, Del?
Well, I guess we've sort of seen it in all its forms over time. We have seen the builder's gone bust when he's been holding on to people's money. We've seen the builder, frankly, disappear. My builder's run off to Spain kind of job. We have seen I completed, and I sent the final payment, and now I find out that it's not been done to standard, or we're 3/4 of the way through the job and the builder's asking for more money, etc., etc., etc.
And I just want to point out there, Del, as well, this isn't just a go at builders. There's some good builders out there. We've actually seen this behaviour of money going walkabout for a building contract from rogue sourcing agents as well. You know what I mean? So they put it into their client account and they use it themselves, and sure enough, that actually creates an issue for the builder. So this is throughout the whole step. It's not just having a builder bashing, right?
No, and let's be totally candid. It falls on investors as well. We've also seen the builders done the work as agreed, and then the investors failed to pay. So, we've done what we've done. We'll come back to that in a second to protect both sides of the parties. But really, it's about scheduling payments according to the progress of the work. Now, we would recommend, and I personally strongly resist, making payments in advance. So, the classic one is that the builder wanting, 30% of the total bill up front for materials. Well, I can tell you from practical experience, having worked in construction back in my day, that most of those people, they're not paying for the materials then and there anyway. They're buying them on account, on a at least 30, possibly 60, possibly more payment terms, and they're paying, the trade count or wherever they're getting the materials, sometime later. So they don't need to be paid in advance either. What the builder's really concerned about is making sure that he doesn't do a load of work and is left out of pocket when someone doesn't pay. So he wants it in advance. Ideally, an investor doesn't want to pay in advance, and there's a sort of tension there. So the way around this is having very clear schedule of payments based on what you're paying for when you delivered proven progress. And then once that proven progress is delivered, you then pay. So we say, now, if you're repainting a house, it's pretty simple. You're probably going to pay, maybe a small amount to get them going, but ideally all in arrears, and they just do the job and then you pay them. That's what happens with most kind of really small works. If you're doing 30 or 40 plus grand of renovations, it's going to have relevant stages. It's going to have demolish and rip it out and sort of prepare it for building works. It's going to have what we describe as first fix. So, putting plaster on the walls and putting the kind of main cabling for the electrical supply and the water and the gas all behind. And then second fix, it gets a bit more detailed, putting on bathroom fittings and electrical fixtures and the like. And then, so you can split, big projects would be split into hundreds of stages, but we see stuff that sensibly lends itself to 3, 4, 5, 6 stages. So again, that needs to be agreed as part of the contract. And then there's a few things I would say. Who is then checking that? Make sure you've got someone who's going to check that work to make sure that it's up to standard and been done before you make the payment. So are you going to do it yourself? Or if you can't do it yourself, are you instructing your sourcer to do that? And would you, for peace of mind, again, this is maybe me being, at the diligent end, let's put it that way, I'd be looking for a third party. If I can't go there myself, I'd probably pay right towards the end for a local surveyor to go and have a look themselves and say to me, look, this is the contract, this is the refurb, is it finished? And when he comes back and says, well, that's hanging out the wall, that's hanging out the wall, well, guess what? I'm not making my final payment. So I guess what we then did is take that to the other level with the renovation escrow to say, put all that in the system, document all those stage payments.
Here you go, Del.
The builder is then saying, okay, I'm ready for stage 1. He wants to make sure he's going to get paid. So if instead of handing your money to that builder, you hand that money to the Sourcing Investments escrow, there's a ring-fenced and insured bank account, and that money's sat in there. So two things are happening. The builder, on the one hand, can see that the money's there, ready to pay him when he's done. So he knows that the investor can't sort of disappear into it or go on holiday. He's going to get paid, so he's happy. And you, as the investor, know that that money isn't going to go anywhere, and the builder's not going to run off with it because he hasn't got it, frankly. And it sits there basically until you both agree. You know, the builder says, "I think it's done," and you, the investor, say, "Yes, I believe the work is done. Also, please pass the money over." And you, as the investor, have that opportunity to say, "I don't think it's complete because you haven't shown me, you know, video or you haven't shown me, you know, video or pictures to prove it." Or, "Do you know what? I'd like to wait until the source has been round," or "I'd like to wait until my surveyor's been round." So it puts you in control, but gives the contractor at the same time the comfort that they're going to get paid. And that's really the essence of what we're doing in terms of the stage payment. And it, you know, we've made this now mandatory on all the SI projects. But frankly, if you're doing a project outside of SI somewhere, I recommend you find something similar. You know, I just think it's a brilliant way of giving everybody visibility and putting the right people in control, and frankly, just making sure no one's run off your money. I mean, Chris and I saw an unbelievable story of, it was £110,000 refurb on a project, and this lady paid the entire refurb amount, 110,000 up front before the builder had started work, without a contract. So not only is there no contract, she then paid for the entire building work up front. And sure enough, the builder ran off with the money. And we then we eventually get introduced to this lady who's clearly very upset, and it is difficult to, I mean, you do feel sorry for her because she's, you know, done bad, but you're sort of looking at it kind of going, you had a property education. How can this have happened? You know, with no contract and paying up front. It's you know, there's a lot of naivety in that. You know, so I would, you know, that's what I love about the renovation escrow service, is it's really, you know, kind of, you know, cutting out that nonsense. You know, I think with that particular, there's, you know, all the tools in SI, that particular tool, I think that is game changer from a risk perspective, from the managing of property investment risk perspective. Eliminating that risk around payments to builders, I think, is huge.
And as I say, this is a comment that was sent in to us prior, and this is from Mark in Hong Kong. And he's just saying, you know, I've lost money when dealing with sourcing agents and builders directly. And so he's learned the hard way. And he goes, that's honestly why I need to tell everyone to use SI. It now gives me total control of me and my money. You know, so, you know.
The easy part, the second part is the builder. The first part is a sourcing agent. And that will have been one of two things. You've either paid fees to a sourcing agent and the deal hasn't happened, and then you can't get your money back from the sourcing agent, or you've paid the sourcing agent money to pay the builder, and the sourcing agent either hasn't paid the builder or has used the money for something else, or etc. So both of those scenarios we've like covered off now, because we have an escrow service for sourcing fees for exactly the same reason. It sits in an SI bank account, and in very broad terms, if the deal happens, we send the money on behalf of the source of the investor, when the investor's happy, to the sourcer. And if the deal falls over, we send the money back to the investor. And so again, that there's that age-old thing of, well, the deal didn't happen, and now I can't get my money back from the sourcer because I paid him in advance. You know, so again, there's sort of the two core pieces of money. I mean, when you buy the property, that's the biggest lump, but that doesn't come anywhere near us. That goes, you know, via the solicitors. That's, you know, safe, if you like. We've tried to, the other two payments you're making really for your sourcer and your builder, we've tried to bring some security to that. So yeah, I think we've got both of those covered now.
So we've got the structure, we've got the contract, we've got the schedule of works, which again isn't a big effort. And I really want to highlight to everybody, you know, listening now and everything, it's not a big deal. This is, you know, tens of thousands of pounds or hundreds of thousands of pounds. And to be able to spend an hour on this, do you know what I mean, in a very structured way of actually executing and preparing yourself, I don't think it's too much to ask. And as I say, it'd be very hard for me to understand people who are very impatient and just say to people, get on with it. You know, I trust you. You know, unfortunately, things go wrong. And this is the only thing that really protects anybody at the end of the day. We've got a very strong legal system here in the UK, and that's why it should be taken advantage of. It's not heavy lifting if you actually have all of the support and utilize the tools that you've got here on SI. So let's say we've got to the point now to go down the journey. We've got down the point where we're happy with the builders, we're happy with the contract, we're happy with the schedule of works, where we've got 5 stages of which we get to stage 3 and something changes. So, for example, I don't know, we know that it wasn't intended, but now a chimney's got to come out because it's a bit unstable structurally. So we know on these building projects that things change, and people also change their minds on specifications. You know, I would like an ensuite in that bedroom now, whereas I didn't know it before. The real question is that, you know, how do I deal with those changes if the project and everything on the contract is set in stone or appears to be? Do I just say get on with it? You know, what if I'm a sourcing agent? Do I just accept that the client wants to change the specification? What do they do? What do all parties do here? And in actual fact, if you comment on it, I'm going to show you. I'll show everybody live the exact problem and what the SI escrow system does to solve that problem. So I'd remind that I've got that to show everybody in a sec now.
Okay, so I'd say I don't think there is a contract, a construction contract that I've ever seen that doesn't involve variation. There's always something. Like you say, there's the unforeseen, because you know when you're particularly you're ripping out a property, you don't know what you're going to find. And then the other thing is the change of mind, from literally building extension through to change the colour of the paint. You know, people change their mind. Or the builder gets into it and realise that now we've looked at it, that's not going to work with that, so we're going to need to do this, and there's additional cost. And there needs to be, you know, in the contract, there should be a clear process for agreeing the pricing and scope of variations. So the contract will stipulate, you know, at the start, you contract with this scope of works, and if there's to be any variation, it has to be agreed in writing between the contractor and the client, and that the contractor shouldn't start any work unless the scope of the work, the cost of the work, and the timing of that work has been agreed. So we've seen those examples where, you know, a builder just seems to have been given sort of free rein to get on with it. You know, kind of, oh yeah, just turn it into a 4-bed HMO with no idea of spec, etc. And they've just gone crazy, you know, kind of. And then what started out as a £30 building project, and right at the end they say, did we say 30? We meant 70. You know, it's blown out of all proportion. You know, so. And then the other thing is, if you do get into variance and you know, let's say there's, well, the classic thing is delay. You know, the thing is kind of over time, and inevitably half or more projects are over time. You know, how do you deal with that? You can end up with dispute around, well, you said do that and we did that and we got more payment for that. I think the other key part is not only having a process to agree variation, having a process to agree what happens if there's a dispute. Because, you know, in an ideal world, you really don't want to be going to court. So as a first step, obviously you want to try and attempt to deal with it yourself. But failing that, have an agreed, I like having an agreed process in the contract that says, if we can't agree, then the following happens. Just so that it's absolutely crystal. And you could have a named third party, so you've both gone off and agreed that, you know, Sam over there is going to be our independent expert, and if there's ever any dispute, we refer to Sam, and we're going to pay Sam's hourly rate of X plus an hour, and Sam will be judge and jury, so often, you know, kind of arbitrator, third party expert, and he will decide who pays for what, and it's legally binding on both of you. And by doing that, you've got a point of resolution, you've got a process, and that will save hours of time, hours of dispute, and probably hours of you know, acres of lawyer fees. So just having that bit of clarity, and again, spending a little bit of time, just go, does it have something to deal with variation? Yeah. Does it have something to deal with what happens in the event of dispute? Great. Yeah. And have that in there.
So what I'm going to show now, everybody, is again, the system that's built to allow everybody to make this simpler for both sources and investors and variants of and even building contractors. So as you can see on the screen here, there's a escrow schedule which is happening right now, and you can see payments have been confirmed. And as I say, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stages in total. You can see that there's additional works and services here, and this is consultancy services for helping set up an agreement with the local lettings agent, including an additional on-site visit. So again, that was agreed up front between the investor and the sourcing agent. Now, if we go down, we can see here that there's now actually an additional stage that's been put in. You can see this additional work. And this is to be paid to the main contractor of an extra for additional fencing to supply and fit gate as per revised schedule. Now, again, for the clarity of everybody concerned, the builder, the sourcing agent, the project manager, the investor, this not only allows that to be completely agreed upon in a forum where it's independent, and ultimately, if it was used, if there was a dispute, this is very, very clear. But now it's even set out with regard to the extra cost, and then allows both the investor and the sourcing agent and the builder to be very clear what that variance is. And you couldn't be a better example, right, of how we built these tools to make it very easy for that, what you've described, that can be challenging, variances, how should it be agreed? Should it just be a WhatsApp saying, yeah, get on with it? Yeah, it's just some fencing. Well, if suddenly you've got an extra £850 on a £4,000 refurb, that's nearly 20%. That's a 20% overspend on your original. So if it's not very clear for everybody concerned, then it could turn into a serious dispute, So couldn't be a better example, could it really?
Yeah.
So we've got all the systems and tools. And this is what we just want to highlight to everybody. It's there, it's built, and why wouldn't you? And there is a little bit of education around this. And as I say, we try and do that for here on the webinars. We try and do that very much go into detail on our mentorship programs and training programs. And as I say, the final real, thing is we've got all these principles. Sounds like a bit of a pain. We've already discussed this, but where would you find a good model contract and get something of real quality put in place between you as the investor, the owner of the property, and the building contractor?
Yeah. So we've done, I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but we've done a video along these lines before, which people can log into. It's in the video section of the website. We've also done a guidance note. In the guidance note, we've probably set out another, a dozen or so, kind of key items that you need to make sure are in the contract. So, you could look at a builder. It depends on, kind of risk and scale of project. You could look at a builder's kind of standard terms. Are we definitely going to be going, okay, maybe use our guidance note and say, okay, is this there and that there? Have you got, is it clear whether they are going to be responsible for delivering a building control sign-off? Have they got insurance-backed warranties? Is there the right to cancel the contract, et cetera, et cetera. So some of the key things in there, who's paying for what? Who's paying for drawings to be produced? So things that can be disputed. So we've sort of come up with a summary. So there is, obviously, what is the builder using themselves? You mentioned JCT. JCT is a sort of very well-known range of contracts, created by the Joint Contracts Tribunal. And you can look up at JCT and see there's various contracts there for different types of works. And there's a few other organisations like the Federation of Master Builders as a standard form contract, which is quite widely used by the people who are members there. The Institute, or Royal Institute of British Architects has its own builder contract you can download. And then there's a few kind of legal outfits like MyLawyer.co.uk and people like that, where I've seen sort of boilerplate contracts, and then they will enable you to do some consultation and adjustment of those contracts. So there's a few good places around there to kind of get standards. So yeah, look at what the builder's got, look at some of those standards. But and then there's no, if the project is big enough and allows, then there definitely isn't a waste of time for me or a waste of money in terms of getting your solicitor to say, I'm thinking of using this. Is this going to be okay? Particularly if it's the builder's standard. If you start using JCT and Federation of Master Builders, you'll probably be a bit more comfortable as long as all the clauses are in there and someone hasn't eliminated something to make life a bit more easy for themselves. So there's definitely some good standards around.
So we've got a couple of questions, and which are going to be really useful. And this is actually one we were asked earlier about, and it's from James in Hong Kong. Doesn't it say a sourcing agent do all of this for me?
So I would say to that, so in an ideal world, the sourcer is going to come with his own, outstanding builder. But we've just, I think the answer is yes, they should. So just make sure that they're doing that. I think that the great quality sourcer should have gone and found the best and the most appropriate builder in his local area, who is going to be, what's the word? I call it cost effective, not cheap. Who's going to deliver. I sort of think it's like, you're going to, good quality product at a good quality product price. That's what I would be looking for. Somebody who's reputable and proven and has got the right contracts in place. But with all things, it's the same as, I just maybe I'm too skeptical, but I'm just not leaving that alone as an assumption. So I want to maybe get some quotes to check that the pricing is valid. And if a contract hasn't arrived, and this has been part of the problem, we've seen that sourcers have just, I've done the sourcing, I'll do the project management, and he thinks he's dealing with a relatively smart and sophisticated investor who, well, presumably he probably just thinks, well, between him and the builder, they'll sort out the contract, and it's never been put in place. So yes, in an ideal world, but don't assume that's being done. Kind of make sure your sourcer is doing that, and at the outset going, can you sourcer get me some comparable quotes if you don't want to do it yourself, and you sourcer, have you got the contract, have you looked at it, who's preparing the schedule of work? Ask those questions. I guess add to that, Chris, is we also provide the managed service now where we UI and the SI team are having oversight. So absolutely, it gets done on our projects because we are, with that painful investor who's asking those difficult questions. So yeah, but SI is for, substantially was built for people sort of, DIY, and it's your project to take responsibility for. So yeah, ask the questions of the sourcer.
And just to be very clear for everybody on the call, the managed service is a line of the business which is now going to be very much launched in the next few weeks, of which we've already got some high net worth investors who ultimately work with SI, works as their agent to actually work with finding, executing deals. So all of the administration from start all the way through to finish. And SI provide that with some high caliber professional individuals who are actually overseeing the sourcing agent and everything around a project. So it's of interest to many. We've launched this because we've had so many inquiries about it. So we're very excited to be able to offer that. And as I say, we've already got a number of clients, probably around about just over 2 million of GDV potentially coming through the pipeline in the next year. So again, this is all about creating solutions to problems. You've seen today, I'm sure everybody, with regard to like the escrow services and stuff like this, that all of this is now inbuilt, and it allows you to have that control at every stage of the investment process with the sourcing agents in this country. So again, all we can say is the tools are there. It's built for you. There's a lot of information. I really appreciate, Dell is having this chat, and I'm sure a lot of people do appreciate this when they're going to be watching this. Come in, have a register, come and see what the SI platform is all about. And as I say, it's not just about the deals. It's actually the investment of your money and your investment of your money in quality assets. But in order to develop those quality assets, there are processes and ways of doing that in a much more professional manner. So therefore, you can secure yourself, secure your money, and secure ultimately a high return on your money and a long-term investment success. So, thank you very much, mate. We've had a couple of questions. We said it was going to be half an hour. As always, we're already at 43 minutes. So it's been really good, mate. And I will talk to you later.
Go over on time, don't they?
Yeah, I know. Overrun, right? It's overrun. But I'll talk to you later, mate.
Overrun, yeah.
But thank you very much, everybody, for listening. I hope it's been really useful. Again, anybody who's interested, please register for the SI family. We're live on YouTube. We're on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And on Thursdays, we've got a very exciting guest, which I'll put out. But this guy's from the United States of America. So we're going to have a very interesting conversation then. And it's about how to position yourself, selling, and more importantly, as I say, understanding yourself and your investments of investing from afar. But thank you very much, mate. I'll talk to you later. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and we'll catch you on the SI experience.
Goodbye.
Cheers. Bye.